there, this is Cassia.
And this is Brian.
Welcome to The Oven Hawk, a podcast discussing Star Wars news and Knights of the Old Republic.
Spoiler alert for the Knights of the Old Republic series and the Star Wars films, TV shows, and all other media.
This is where the fun begins. All right, so thank you for joining us today on the Oven Hawk podcast. Today we'll be making our way through Kashyyyk again, and in episode 59 I talked a bit about it with Huni, and today we're going to discuss Jolee Bindo fancasts and how we would like to see Kashyyyk cinematically, and I think it's going to be a pretty fun one. So just as a recap, in the first iteration of KOTOR, whether it is a movie, a series, or, whatever we're going to have in the future, we've successfully made it off of Terrace after crash landing from the Endar Spire. We've done our Jedi training on Dantooine. Now it's time to wrap up the final destination of our cinematic adaptation on Kashyyyk. Why did we want to end the final installation on Kashyyyk?
Yeah, so when you're playing the game, right, so you get off of Terrace, you go to Dantooine, and then you can basically choose wherever you want to go. But I think cinematically, I think we're both kind of in the same mindset that Kashyyyk is kind of a better resting point for the Ebon Hawk crew, right, at the close of this first film adaptation, and I think that it's going to give us the opportunity to kind of tie up, at least for right now, some of the storylines for some of our characters.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned the pattern that my friend Ian has mentioned, and I kind of just see it as the Star Wars pattern, and it's kind of like the first iteration of a Star Wars trilogy is like the hero's journey. Where it's kind of like you're kind of seeing the rise of a hero or heroine, and then the second iteration is kind of more genre inspired and usually kind of has a downturn at the end, and then the third film is a reclamation, like a hero rising, and the only exception to that is Revenge of the Sith. But I guess if you're looking at it from the villain's point of view, a villain did rise, it was just Darth Vader,
Right, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I mean, part of me did kind of consider, ending it on Tatooine, but I'm like, it's kind of not as triumphant, I would say.
Sure, right.
Tatooine, I would say, Kashyyyk, you're kind of, helping Zalabar and his people reclaim their land from the Zerka Corporation.
Right, yeah. Kashyyyk, it gives you, like I said, it gives you the opportunity to sort of tie up some storylines, stuff you don't necessarily get on Tatooine or on Manon. So I think Kashyyyk just makes sense in that standpoint as far as, concluding film with it. Yeah,
and we'll mention, what we would do in a second iteration more in the future, and, I'm really excited for that, but I kind of think that Tatooine and Manon, definitely have more, genre film influences, and I don't know. I think they just kind of pair with that pattern really well.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some films you would use as a reference for Kashyyyk?
So you fly into Kashyyyk, and the Ebon Hawk lands, and you're kind of in more of I don't even think it's up all the way up in the canopy, right? Those trees are pretty tall, but you got the village there in the trees, and then you'd also have the Shadowlands, down underneath. So you have kind of two areas of Kashyyyk that you're going to need to take a look at. I was thinking about how I would like to see Kashyyyk portrayed on film, and I immediately think of Lothlorien in Lord of the Rings. How and that village is kind of set like in the middle of the trees. It's very ethereal looking, and I think that you could do something really similar. Uh, Except it wouldn't be gilded in gold as much. It would be kind of like ornate carvings and things, but you'd have this really cool kind of mid tree village where the Wookiees are living.
Yeah, I like how you kind of describe other films as reference, like how it will all appear.
Hmm.
Cause I'm kind of like, if it looks like how it looks in KOTOR, I'm fine with that. If it looks like how it looks like in Revenge of the Sith,
Hmm.
or even the Star Wars Holiday Special, which I think everyone pretends doesn't exist, but
Right.
um, I would be fine with it kind of being a combination of all those.
Hmm.
And I don't know if it's like, it's with sci-fi, sometimes planets are just like single biome planets, and like if they go to a planet, it's like they always go to the one city on the planet, you know.
Sure. Right.
um and it's like, I'm like, maybe if like Chewie is like from the Canada part of Kashyyyk, maybe it's
Uh-huh.
like, maybe the KOTOR part takes place, like in the France part of Kashyyyk. It's like sometimes I'm just like, maybe not everything has to happen in one city.
Right.
But
Yeah, there's a whole planet to explore. Definitely. So it could definitely have a little bit of a different look from like you'd mentioned what we'd seen before in like Revenge of the Sith or and other kind of iterations of the way that Kashyyyk had looked.
yeah, and I guess I'm a bit of a Disney fan, but I guess the films I kind of think of when I was thinking of Kashyyyk is The Lion King. I guess
Oh,
maybe it's
okay.
just because like I've been a bit inspired by Christopher Vogler's The Writer's Journey.
Hmm.
He was a script doctor on that film, The Lion King, and I just think it's like, it's a good film about like someone having to come back and kind of become an adult and also become a king. And
Right.
it also reminds me a bit of Black Panther. So maybe not like the most prestigious. Well, I think they're good. I think they're good films, but maybe it's not like I'm not mentioning like like classics from the 50s, and I kind of feel guilty.
Right. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I think seeing, kind of the more of the village of Kashyyyk kind of like that. And then I think as far as like the Shadowlands, I would imagine it, kind of dark and mysterious, like the Forbidden Forest, like in Harry Potter, something like that. But it's well below the tree canopy. So it's going to be, you know, pretty dark, and damp down there. I'd almost like vision it in my head as like down like in the depths of the ocean, right? So you're going to have, creatures there, with bright eyes and things to see and kind of the darkness. So kind of more of those like, uncharted water types of feeling, even though you'd be on like a forest planet.
Do you think that if there were like, if there was bioluminescence down in the lower levels, would that be encroaching on uh, Pandora and Avatar?
Maybe, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay
Yeah,
though. I think you can borrow and choose. And especially when you get into the Shadowlands and you have, Zerkas down there with their big floodlights and things.
yeah,
So you're gonna get kind of
yeah.
some different parallels to it. But I think that the descent down into the Shadowlands on that elevator would be just kind of striking visually in the difference.
Yeah, I mean, there probably could be some Avatar parallels, but when you kind of mention it, like how you would want the upper levels and the Shadowlands to appear, like I guess now it kind of makes more sense in my mind. Some of the reasons why I would plot the beginning, like how I would plot this film,
Hmm.
is because it's like it starts on the Endar Spire, but that's kind of just like an opening taste to get you into the universe and like kind of like the kind of
Right.
what causes everything. Terrace is like, it's kind of a tragedy. Like no one leaves that planet feeling like they saved it. It's literally destroyed. you get
Sure.
off by the skin of your teeth, but it's like you kind of failed the planet, you know? I mean, you help some people along the way and you hope that the people in the promised land are okay, but
Hmm.
there's no guarantees, and like once it's bombarded the whole game. And I was thinking like Terrace, it's a corrupt planet. It has 3 levels. And I was thinking with like Kashyyyk, it's kind of a mirror
Hmm.
to Terrace. Like you have a on Terrace you have a city. I mean, in cities and jungles, sometimes like people kind of like are like, ooh, this city's a jungle, you know. It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's so crowded and stuff. But
Concrete jungle. Yeah.
yeah, concrete jungle, and it's like I was like 3 levels on Terrace. It's a city, and then it's a tragedy, and then Dantooine in the middle. But then you have Kashyyyk, and then it's like maybe you have the how the upper city was corrupt, the lower city, and then the undercity, and then on Kashyyyk, it's a it's a city within a forest. You know, like it's like the
Right.
whole world is a forest. You know, and so it's like you have a city versus nature. You know, and it's like and Kashyyyk would be kind of triumphant. So it's like on Terrace, it was a failure, but the city's triumphant, and it's like maybe there's a circa level, and then like kind of, or
Right.
maybe not level, but at least it's like you have 3 different aspects to Kashyyyk. It's like you have the circa area, the Wookiee, the true level, and then you have the Shadowlands.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then Zalabar, he returns from his exile and like reunites with his family
Right.
and his father in his village, and he's kind of like the prodigal son, you know, and he would help his people rise up from Zerka and reclaim Kashyyyk, you know.
Because he gets cast out, right? He gets sent away, after discovering the corruption with his brother, and no one kind of believes him, so he gets cast out. But when he returns, he's coming back to his brother being in charge, and his father's also been banished. So he has a lot of kind of wrongs to right when he gets back. So
Yeah, and what group of characters do you think would stay with the tribe, and which characters would you bring down to the Shadowlands? Would you have the 3 character limit, or would you kind of just be like, for a movie, we do what we want?
yeah, I think you have to almost kind of do what you want. So in the game, uh, Zalbar stays up with the tribe, right? They're basically holding him like as a prisoner while you go on this mission to sort all of this stuff. But I think in a film, I would like to see Zalbar going to find his father and find the sword and kind of go on this mission. So I would see him going, and I would also see probably Karth going. Maybe you leave Mission behind. Maybe she's the one that gets kind of held prisoner, which kind of forces Zalbar into going on this quest down into the Shadowlands.
Yeah, those are some good points.
I also think that it's probably best from a story perspective to leave Bastila up in the Wookiee village as opposed to going down into the Shadowlands too, because that might be a little bit too much when we finally are introduced to Jolee to have a whole bunch of Jedi there. I think it just gives a little bit more room to breathe and let Jolee kind of feel out Revan, and because he likely knows Revan or knows of Revan, and I don't know. I think that lets that kind of breathe a little bit more by not having Bastila there.
Yeah, I was listening to an episode of Inside the Force, and Claudia Gray, they were interviewing Claudia Gray, and she was mentioning other eras, and I was happy to hear that if the KOTOR era is ever tackled, she wants to be the one to write the book about Mission and Zalbar becoming friends. And I was like, that would be perfect.
Yeah, that would be
I
great.
want that to happen right now.
Absolutely.
So there are 2 ways I could see that going. Like maybe Mission is kind of held as like a hostage by
Hmm.
Zerka.
Right.
That could work well. Or you get to see Mission and Zalbar like be the duo they are, and like if this is kind of like where I would leave them, I would want to highlight their teamwork. So it's like they're growing and they're becoming adults and they're Fireforge friends and they're kind of like each other's family in a way. It's like they're found family.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'd be fine either way, just depending on how it goes. I think I'd prefer just to see them work together as a team rather than have mission held hostage. But yeah, that. And I kind of don't know what to do with Canderous. I don't know if he would just kind of like, because honestly, I have no idea why he would just stick around after he gets off of Terrace.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you'd almost have to sort of invent a reason for him to stay behind, whether it's something's going wrong with the Ebon Hawk and he has to stay behind to fix it, or something. But I don't see him having a particular role. I mean, he could go with you into the Shadowlands. He would be very good down there, especially in terms of the game because there's other Mandalorians down there. So that could be interesting to have him tagging along down below as well.
Yeah. So if someone can if anyone can come up with a reason to like keep Canderous around, I'm for it. Like I love the character.
Right.
I mean, I do think like in the second iteration, you could either have Juhani. I kind of lean towards Juhani or Canderous rescuing the team off of the Leviathan. Maybe both of them, and they have to team up because it's like that could maybe be poetic because like Jedi and Mandalorians would used to fight against each other. Then it's like we're gonna save our friends.
Right.
And yeah, so I'm not. I'm okay if like Canderous is around or he's just kind of doing his own thing and just dealing with like like being a strong dude, and like trying to find his place in the world.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then I kind of foresee like I was gonna call him R2, but I meant T3M4.
Yeah.
I could see him staying with the ship or maybe staying with Bastila. I think it would be good if some characters kind of stay in the upper levels to fight against Zerka, and then maybe there's like a battle going on like in the Shadowlands and then the upper levels, and then they kind of like you kind of alternate between those. That could be fun.
Right. Yeah, because in the game you finish the Shadowland section and you go back up and it's kind of like an all out war going on with Zerka. But yeah, you could definitely leave like I'd mentioned, having Bastila stay behind, up in the Wookiee village and things. They could be going on their own mission to figure out what's going on in Zerka, or figure out where Zalbar's brother is staying, and
Yeah.
sort of their own kind of side quest. Because I think at this point we have there's like 10 characters already, so you're definitely gonna have to split them up. So
There's a big cast of characters, yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't. I would kind of just have Mission come to the realization that she was ghosted by her brother. I
right.
probably wouldn't have him appear because I just don't think it's necessary. That's just what I was thinking, but it is kind of like a big deal, I think, for Bastila to have to kind of be like, to trust Revan to be able to go down there on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned like it would just be too many Jedi, like because I think if Bastila was there for that conversation, it would just be like, why aren't you going back to the Jedi? What's going on? You kind of just want to be able to meet Jolee on his own terms, and I definitely think he knew that Revan was Revan the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he is just wise, and just like he's not gonna just tell Revan, he's just kind of figuring out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely.
But yeah, if Bastila is in the upper levels and Revan is with Zalbar and possibly Mission down on the down in the Shadowlands, I think it kind of builds the bond up a bit more, because it's like there you kind of have to be like, what is Basila doing? And then she'll be like, what's Revan doing? And then you kind of see like they're working well on a team, even if they're like not like in the same place. So I
Right.
think you could do a lot of like, you could establish kind of what the bond is a bit, and like maybe like you could have a bit of like a Han Leia flirtation on the level of like not quite a full Attack of the Clones Anakin and Padme, but maybe like, you know,
Right.
somewhere in between Anakin and Padme and Han and Leia in A New Hope, somewhere in that level, I think.
It might be a good kind of introduction to exploring their kind of force bond as well if they're separated. Kind of at the tail end
Yeah,
of this film would set that up going into the second film. That this is
because yeah,
this is kind of one of their abilities that they have, because up and up until this point they wouldn't have really had any reason to be using it or exploring it. So
yeah, they're building trust and teamwork and kind of working together, like, but then just kind of discovering the depths of the bond. And I'm kind of not quite sure how to show it on screen in relation to like, you know, the Rey and Kylo
mm-hmm.
thing, because you kind of just don't want to repeat yourself cinematically, but
Right.
you want to have some continuity within like the greater saga. So maybe it's like if it's kind of like a bit more mental and dreamlike, you know, but I'm not opposed to like the cutaways that they did like in 8 and 9.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, so we've decided which characters we're going to leave, up in the Wookiee village, and which ones are going to go down into the Shadowlands. But if you want to find out a little bit more about us, you could always check out our Patreon. If you want to do that, you can find the link in our bio on Instagram, which is at Ebonhawk Podcast, or you can find it on www.patreon.com/Ebonhawk Podcast. And that's going to tell you a little bit more about what we have going on Patreon. Cassia is posting the scripts. We have other sort of things going on over there, and we're getting ready to do kind of our first Patreon exclusive episodes, doing some reviews and recaps of some different movies and TV shows coming up. So you'll definitely want to go check that out. And if you are on there, you can ask a question, like our good friend Kai from Plex Armory. He's asking, in a live action version of KOTOR, do you have all the Wookiees subtitled, or do you introduce a character like Ra Rashin from New Jedi Order who could speak Basic? Cassia, what do you think? Are we doing subtitles in the film, or?
Um I'm actually I'm actually thinking no subtitles. I think if we can tell the story using music and gestures and just kind of like uh, the other characters speaking, like how
Mm-hmm.
it's how other characters will just speak to Chewie. I think that works, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be interesting to see a Wookiee speak Basic, but I think it's just been established that in all of the 9 films and Solo, that Wookiees, it just doesn't seem like they speak Basic. I think like people would maybe lose their minds if they saw a Wookiee speaking Basic. Not that maybe there is a Wookiee that has spoken Basic, but
Yeah, and now even into the High Republic as well, right? So
yeah. So maybe there's some out there that can. I think it would maybe be a bit of a departure for me, but
mm-hmm.
I mean, if it can be done well, I'm all on board for like things happening. But what about you?
Yeah, I think it's pretty natural to just have sort of someone who understands it. We have Mission, and we know that she can speak with Zalbar. She understands what he's saying. Presumably, Jolee would also be able to understand Treewook, having spent the last 20 years on the planet. So I think between the two of them, you'd have ample opportunities for anything that needs kind of translated or conveyed to the audience between the two of them. They could do it, and I actually think that there's something kind of interesting and intimate. So, like, Zalbar is reunited with his father. If they kind of have, uh, a moment to be together and to catch up, like, I think you can convey enough with, kind of the emotion on their face and the way that the music's playing and the lighting and things that you wouldn't necessarily need to know exactly what they're saying to understand what they're saying. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, you could just feel it, like with color, tone, music, and gestures, and the acting. Like, I think like you could get a lot through with that. So
Yep.
yeah,
So thank you, Kai, for that question. It's a good question.
and then we'll just take a quick break and talk more about the Jolee Bindo of it all. So in the game, you find Jolee Bindo in the Shadowlands. How do you
Mm-hmm.
envision meeting Jolee?
Right. So in the game, if I'm not mistaken, you're wandering around the Shadowlands and you just kind of come across his little dwelling there, if I'm not mistaken, and yeah, he comes out and asks you for help. Basically, he's going to help you find the star map if you help him take care of some pests that are in the area. So. I don't know in a film that's probably the way I would go about it. I would maybe see him kind of following along the party, kind of in the shadows. He is he was a Jedi Padawan at least, and he knows the forest. So I think that you would kind of get glimpses of him before he actually reveals himself, as he's kind of trying to figure out who this party of characters is.
Yeah, maybe you could like hear rumors of like a force wielding vigilante from
Mm-hmm.
like Zerka, and like maybe like Jolee is trying to figure out. It's like, okay, I'm feeling a serious force presence. I need to kind of figure what's going on, and then like he just kind of follows, and so he's like, okay, so that's literally the Dark Lord Revan, like who is dressed as a Jedi, acting like a Jedi, doesn't know
Right.
who he is, and he has teammates and they're doing good
Mm-hmm.
and also looking for a star map. So like something's going on. So I think he would kind of follow, and then I mean like in stories when the hero is ready, the mentor appears.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how I say it would happen. Not specific, but just the way it's meant to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's just going to kind of show himself after he's gotten the impression of who this party is, and like you said, he's gonna know who Revan is. He knows where the star map is. If you read about him, he'd apparently been trying to get into it for this whole time that he'd been living on Kashyyyk. So yeah, I think
What's the
he's
password?
yeah yeah I think he's just gonna kind of pop out either Revan and crew are going to get stuck somewhere and need some help, and he's going to finally come out and rescue them, or a bunch of these animals that are down there lurking around, which are called Katarns, I believe. Um, so, so I think he's going to kind of come to the aid and show himself, but I don't think you're actually going to seek him out like you do in the game necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think it would feel a bit. I don't think in a movie it would feel kind of side questy. Like, if you do this, I will do this.
Right.
I think it would be epic. Like, Jolee Bindo is a guy who has been through a lot. He was a Jedi Padawan during the times of the Tales of the Jedi comics, which I'm a bit familiar with, and I think you're reading them right now, right?
Yeah, I actually have the actual comics, but I finally got the Marvel Unlimited app, so now I have them on my phone, so I can just you know pull it open and read through one. Kind of whenever
Yeah,
I get a free couple of minutes, which is really convenient. So
yeah, and so he's a contemporary of like Ulick Queldrama, Nomi Sunrider, and when we get talking about Nomi Sunrider, we can talk about the Sunrider naming controversy, and it's actually kind of really interesting. So that's why in KOTOR 2, you the robes are called Nomi's robes, and like you can't ever mention the last name Sunrider in like in the old EU. It was a big deal, but
Mm.
yeah, it's interesting. And he fought Exar Kun. So Jolee Bindo was a Padawan during that time, but his wife fell to the dark side and joined Exar Kun, and he had to kill her, and that really messed with him. And I talked about that in a solo episode when I did the KOTOR I Love You episode. So
Oh, right.
if you
Yeah.
want to listen to that, there's that. But what do you think about Jolee?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of messed him up, right? So he was a Padawan. He wanted to train his wife, and the Jedi Council told him not to, but he kind of did anyway, and she ended up falling to the dark side. Like you mentioned, he had to kill her. Um, and then he spent the next year kind of roaming around doing, odd jobs and stuff before eventually, I guess, according to legend anyway, he crash landed his ship on Kashyyyk, and then he just stayed there. So he was there for like 20 years. So he would have been there when Revan was putting in these star maps and things. So he definitely would have known about Revan. But what I'm kind of interested in is why he decided to stay in Kashyyyk, right? So, I mean, he was a Jedi or a Padawan, but he at least would have been able to persuade himself off of Kashyyyk if he would have wanted to leave. But I just think it's interesting that he just decided to stay there in his self exile.
Yeah, I think it would kind of make more sense if he just kind of exiled himself rather than like he just crash landed somewhere.
Hmm.
I see it as like very intentional. Like after he killed his wife, like I don't see him just being like, okay, I guess I'm an Uber Eats driver. Like I
Right.
see him as just like exiling himself intentionally and leaving his exile when Revan crosses his path, like and joining up with him very intentionally. I feel like the situation with his wife and just like fighting in the Jedi Sith Wars, like he just kind of saw everything, like the Jedi's hypocrisy, the worst of the worst on the Sith side with Exar Kun.
Right.
I don't think he would really want to deal with the greater galaxy, but then when Revan comes across his path, I think he sees it as the Force saying like it's time to leave and move on and maybe
Right.
keep an eye on Revan to either be a mentor or if you have to put down another dark-sided person
Hmm.
to do that. And that's what I think. Like I don't know if he like personally identified with Kashyyyk when he crash landed, but I think as he lived there, he learned to really love the Wookiees. The Wookiees, you know?
Hmm. Right.
So, I mean, there's a quote where it's like someone says, the Wookiees? And he's like, the Wookiees, and
Yep.
it's great. I think he was just trying to find, like, I don't know if it was solace or an escape after what happened, but
Hmm.
he could have gotten off if he wanted to, but he didn't.
Yeah, I think it was just making atonement and spending some time there by himself. But we see kind of some parallels to that sort of thing in Star Wars, right? So you have him on Kashyyyk, and then you have some other self exile, going on in the story. So Yoda's self exiling in Dagobah after he's made his mistakes, and the same with Luke, self exiling on Octu to kind of atone for his mistakes. So I definitely see a lot of parallels, kind of as you go through Star Wars and these tales of self exile. So
Yeah, and I definitely see some parallels with Obi-Wan on
true. Yep.
Tatooine. And I think maybe the writers were kind of like, oh, let's have Jolee on a nature planet to mirror Yoda with Dagobah. But I almost kind of see more parallels with Kenobi and Jolee rather than Yoda.
Hmm.
But maybe that's just me. So, do you think that Jolee would just be kind of like Ahsoka Tano who's not technically a Jedi, but kind of embodies the ideals of a Jedi probably better than any literal Jedi in the series.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing through the game, you definitely get that feeling, right? He seems very down the middle, and anytime Bastila is spouting the good virtues of the Jedi, he's always there to kind of play devil's advocate with it almost. So yeah, I definitely can see the parallel between the two of them, where once a Jedi and now maybe more of a Jedi than the actual ones were.
Yeah, that would be nice to have some scenes between like Jolee and Bastila, because I think definitely like Jolee would be like, okay, Bastila is kind of having to lie, and kind of like doesn't really feel great about it, but she thinks she's doing the right thing, and it's like a bad parent, like not Jolie, but the Jedi Council is like a bad parent to her, and she's trying to win their affection, and just
Hmm.
kind of like not questioning it when they kind of like say like you should do, like commit war crimes, and it's like okay, whatever makes you proud, but it would just be cool to have some scenes between Jolie and Bastila before everything goes like downhill. I think in the second one,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well, yeah, and certainly what we know about the Jedi Order, they almost certainly would have put Jolie forward as a symbol of what not to do, right?
yeah,
Like they would have said, "Oh, look at this guy. We told him not to, not he was a Padawan. We told him not to train his wife, and look what happened. You don't want to, repeat in the same mistakes as Jolie. So, and certainly Bastila is, you know, being the studious one that she is, would have certainly probably heard this tale and at least be familiar with the story of him. I would think, anyways.
yeah. I don't know if it's hard because in the games, Jolie says he's a gray Jedi, and like he kind of just uses the light and dark interchangeably, but
Hmm.
kind of like George Lucas, you can't really use the light and dark interchangeably. You can just be aligned with the light. That doesn't mean like you're perfect and like you do 100% of the light sided things all the time, but overall you're kind of just affiliated with the light side.
Right.
Like it's either like you're selfless or you're selfish.
Hmm.
And so I don't really see Grey Jedi being a thing. And I think maybe some fans would be disappointed with that when it's like, nope, it's not a thing. Sorry about that, but so I wonder how like some fans would handle that. And what do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that's what's really interesting about the game, and that would be interesting to see adapted into a live action portrayal. Is you have sort of all of these different sort of tiers and self-identifying Jedi, right? So you have Bastila, who's at least at this juncture, kind of the model Jedi. You'd have Revan, who had fallen and uh, maybe redeemed. We still don't know where he would stand at this point. You would have Jolee, who's self-identifying as kind of this gray Jedi, kind of into both sides, and then you would have Juhani, who had definitely at least flirted and served the dark side at least for a time, but is on her way back to redemption at this point. So I just think that that's really interesting. You have sort of these four different viewpoints on this same ideology.
Yeah. And when it comes to fan casts, like I I really like Keith David. He would be my ideal Jolee Bindo.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I first saw him in Community,
Hmm.
in season 6 of Community, and I'm like, this guy's great. Like, I think he would be awesome. And like looking at his filmography,
Hmm.
he was the voice of Goliath from Gargoyles, and he was also Captain Anderson from Mass Effect and in the Riddick films.
Hmm.
And Ironic Designs did a great design kind of featuring Keith David as Jolee Bindo, so you should
Hmm.
check that out. But
Yeah.
who's your fan cast?
Yeah, so my fan cast, Keith David's a really good pick, by the way. But my fan cast is going to be Lenny James. So anyone listening, if you don't know who Lenny James is, he's probably most recognizable from playing Morgan in The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. I think he's really good actor. He plays kind of on these more subtle emotions. If you watch him in The Walking Dead, he carries a lot of weight, like in his face and his expressions. I just think that he could pull off someone like Jolee, who's had kind of a lifetime of self reflection. So,
Yeah, that's a good pick. Speaking of ironic designs, they suggested Tim Russ, and Tim Russ was also in Spaceballs and Star Trek Voyager. So if
yeah,
he were to be in a Star Wars film, it's like I think that would be a space film hat trick or something. So
yeah, he would have done the circuit. That would be good. That's a good pick, Tim Ross. I like that.
yeah, and then I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Ojibwave. How do you think that's pronounced?
I would go with Ojibwave, but official Ojibwave official, but definitely let us know if we're saying that wrong. And
Yeah. So Ojibwave official says Donald Glover from the 1980s. And Donald
mm-hmm.
Glover was also on Community, but I think what they were meaning was Daniel Glover from the 1980s, and I think that would have been great, you know.
Yeah, well,
So
so I just looked it up. Donald Glover was born in 1983, so he would have been a very young Jolie Bindo in the
yeah,
in
yeah.
the 80s.
So
But yeah, Danny Glover would be good. That would be an interesting pick, I think.
yeah, and then someone said Morgan Freeman as a joke. I think he just wouldn't be the right fit, even though Morgan Freeman is always a win, you know. But
Yeah, I think if Morgan Freeman wanted to play Jolie Bindo, you have to let him do it, right? But I don't I don't know that
yeah,
he would be my best pick for it, probably.
yeah. Someone suggested Anthony Mackie as a young Jolie Bindo, and I was like, that would be great. Like, if we ever got to see Jolie Bindo's story with his wife and with the Jedi Sith Wars in the background, like, that would be excellent to see on Disney Plus, you know? And
That would be cool. Yeah, if you ever got like a Jedi and Sith War kind of little miniseries or something, he would be a good young Jolie Bindo, but I don't know about for the current Jolie Bindo that we're finding on Kashyyyk.
yeah, that would be a little bit of a departure from the game, but definitely a young Jolie Bindo, that would be awesome. And then we had someone suggest Michael Dorn, and this is a prolific Star Trek actor, and I think that would be a cool fit, you know? So,
Yep. I'm not super familiar with him, but yeah, it looks like he could pull off that part pretty good. So yeah, I'm okay
yeah,
with that one.
yeah. And there's been a few actors who have, I think, been in Star Trek and Star Wars, but it's always kind of fun to see the crossover.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
All right. So today I just wanted to read a review that we received on Apple Podcasts. This comes from the Bull One, who says everyone needs to listen to episode 59. And if you can't remember, episode 59 was the episode where I was joined by Huni, and we talked about Kashyyyk parallels with the indigenous experience in 59. It was a great episode, and it was really, Huni really helped me out, and we were able to discuss a lot of important issues, like through the lens of Star Wars and sci-fi, and talk about real issues uh, plaguing the world and the indigenous experience. So they say everyone needs to listen to episode 59, 59 Kashyyyk parallels with the indigenous experience featuring Huni, a really awesome Star Wars artist, was incredible. I was not expecting so much depth, history, and exploration into what I initially thought was just a side quest mission in this game. Whether you haven't played KOTOR or played it multiple times, you'll get a lot out of this podcast. This podcast, especially the episode, touches on the impact Star Wars has on all of us. So I just wanted to say thank you to the Bull One for that review. It means a lot, and that episode would have been nothing without Huni. So please check out Huni on Instagram, and Apple Podcasts reviews, subscriptions, and shares help us out. So we're very grateful.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. So how would you end this film?
That's hard. We've spent a lot of time working on this first movie. It's weird to think that we're figuring out how to wrap it up, right? So I think we've been to the Shadowlands. We've kind of recruited Jolee into the party at this point, but hey, we're up to what, like 10 characters now. So I think we're going to have to make the decision to, as painful as it may be, I think we're going to have to leave a couple of characters behind. And I think that leaving Zalbar and Mission behind on Kashyyyk just makes the most sense. You set, Zalbar up to kind of, take over his village and get Zerka sorted. Mission gets to stay with him and kind of help him get settled in. And there, what do you think? Do we need to leave some people behind, or?
I think Mission and Zalbar staying behind on Kashyyyk, it fits. Zalbar has found his people. He's become who he needs to be, and he's stepping up for his tribe. He'll be. I think Kashyyyk is a monarchy. I'm not sure, like, to step up as king or chief, and I think, like, Mission's story throughout the film is, like, she's finding her new family. She's not held back by needing Griff, her brother who left her behind. I think she comes to that realization as she kind of grows up through the story. Like, they lost Terrace, but Mission is happy. Like, Zalbar is her brother, basically, her new brother. And I think she will find a place, like, defending, the Wookiees on Zerka. And I think it's definitely safer for Zalbar and Mission to stay on Kashyyyk rather than being chased by Malak throughout the galaxy,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what I would do. And it's like, I foresee them in the final battle returning.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this wouldn't be the last we would see of Mission and Zalbar, but I think for just the purposes of storytelling, I think that it makes the most sense to leave them here at this point anyways.
Yeah. So it's not like we wouldn't ever see them again, but they became who they need to be, and Zalbar's reclaiming his place, and they're kind of getting Kashyyyk sorted out and kind of freeing it from Zerka and rebuilding. So I think, like, I wouldn't feel sad. Like, I would feel like they accomplished what they set out to do. Who is the bounty hunter in this game who has the Doc-Ock glasses from Terrace? Calo Nord.
Calo Nord, yeah.
Would you have Darth Bandon and Calo Nord appear in this game? Or in this movie?
Probably not. Well, in the movie, yes, because we in the game at least you have the fight with them as you're fleeing Terrace, right? And I think that would make sense to have them there as sort of a battle over who gets to commandeer the Ebon Hawk and get off of Terrace. So I think you'd see them there, but I don't know that we would need to see them again in Kashyyyk. Probably again at some point in the second film.
I guess for me, Calo Nord was never really that interesting, and he always kind of stuck out as like, oh, well, this is some guy trying to redo Boba Fett, but, with
Right.
goggles.
Yeah.
And, I just wasn't really that interested in like, oh, he died. Oh wait, he survived somehow to die again. I'm
Right.
just not really that interested. I'm like, okay, whatever.
I could see him being sort of a foil in the film if he's working more closely with Darth Malik, and he's also trying to run down these star maps, and you're just kind of in a race against him. But I don't see him just popping up every once in a while to try to kill you like he does in the game. So
I guess I could maybe see him appearing, but I would kind of just prefer he just die on Terrace, and I'll be like, well, no matter what, we'll always have Terrace.
yeah.
But I would maybe have Darth Bandon appear to die in the first iteration, you know,
Right.
because maybe there's a battle happening with Zerka somewhere, and then on one level, and then maybe on one level, someone has to fight Darth Bandon. And I
Hmm.
think maybe if Bastila fought Darth Bandon, like double lightsaber to double lightsaber, that would just be an interesting fight. And
Hmm.
just so it explains, like, for me, I just don't really see Darth Bandon really fitting into the second movie. I think it would just be a little bit too busy.
Yeah.
Unless maybe, like, she just totally kills him on the Leviathan, and then, like, Darth Malik is like, oh, wait, like, I need a new intern, and she just killed him,
Right.
and so she gets the job. That's,
Yeah.
I could maybe be okay with that, but I would kind of like to just see, like, you have like an upstairs and a downstairs sequence. It's like, I guess it's not literally like stairs, but like upper levels of trees, lower levels of trees. And it's like two battles are kind of happening, and just so everyone's kind of doing something. One's fighting against Zerka, one's kind of fighting against Malik, and like kind of just like maybe it kind of signals like Darth Malik is like, oh wait, my replacement goldfish Sith Padawan is dead, huh? And defeated by Bastila, and maybe that gets his like mind turning, like so.
Yeah. You could almost have that in place of the first film kind of ending ground and space battle like you'd have in the episode 1 and episode 4 and um,
Yeah,
episode 7, right?
Star
So
Wars,
yeah, so
a war in the stars.
a war in the stars,
What?
but yeah, you could definitely kind of mirror it, right? So you'd have the battle going on in the kind of Shadowlands area, and also one going up in the village. So to kind of
Yeah,
pay give a nod to that sort of storytelling. So
yeah. I mean, maybe even Karth could just be like, and then he has to fly the Ebon Hawk against something for some reason. That would
hmm.
maybe be a little bit too much for me. I would save the grand battle for the third iteration,
Right.
the Starforge battle. I'm just like, I think some studio executives would be like, there needs to be a space battle, and it's like, you get to leave Terrace really fast. That's your space battle. It's in the middle. But
Right.
here it's about the human drama. But and the Wookiee drama. So, but yeah, I would definitely even really kind of want to see battle meditation used to an extent, just so we
Okay.
don't just hear about it, rather than just like hear about it, hear about it, hear about it, and then you finally see it in the third movie. So
Hmm.
that's something I would want to see. So, but in the future, we'll kind of like talk about like how we kind of would see the first movie as a whole. So I think it's gonna be fun because I just love movies, and like Brian obviously loves movies. So
Yeah, it'll be fun to go back and kind of recap it and just give kind of a broad overview, right? So get into some of the details here in this episode and some other episodes like it, but to just kind of go back and give kind of a pitch for the overall kind of look and feel and pacing of the movie as a whole. I think that's going to be really fun. So
yeah, so look forward to that. And you can find us on Instagram at Ebon Hawk Podcast.
And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram. It's at astro_droid_. The Ebb and Hawk can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as everywhere else that Anchor podcasts are distributed. Subscriptions, reviews, and shares help us out.
Our intro and outro themes were composed by Alistair Scheuerman at alistairsounds.wixsite.com/Alistair Sounds. Our transition music was composed by Christian Walker at christianwalkermusic.com. This episode of the Ebb and Hawk podcast has been brought to you by Nikki Dog from Patreon. May the force be with you. We will be back soon. Bye for now.